He is ready.
You're on live. I did a little early.
Kren, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm letting them all on.
Okay.
And then Kren, if you could keep an eye from there on.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What up? What up? What up?
Morning.
What is up? What's up with everybody?
How Jordan's
Morning,
game go?
everyone.
What's that, Greg?
I said, how Jordan's game turn out?
That was great. We had a wonderful time. Great event. Good time.
Good. I'm glad you made
You
it
did
back
good.
safely.
Yeah, me too.
Did not like that eerie video you sent me.
I know. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah. Well, it is a stark
Somebody-
reminder of how blessed we are.
No, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. See, it was interesting. Interesting. We're excited for today. We had a great night here in Atlanta last night. We had actually a big day. We had a great day, had a really good bop, and we had I thought tremendous training. We were, matter of fact, now we're going to go over a few of those things in just a little while that I think apply to this as we get started out. Are you ready to go, Kimberly?
Yeah, we're ready. You're already live. So,
Oh, okay, good. There we go. Welcome everybody to Wealth Wednesday. Excited to have all of you here. Appreciate your time and effort. Get your teammates on because we've got a great program lined up today. And we're going to focus on the rest of the year. It's time for us to really go on a focus as we finish up. And my question for you is, it's interesting what you can get to if you exchange for the cost of 1 hour a day, what you could get. That's all the price tag is. 1 hour a day, you can get in the best shape of your life. 1 hour a day, you can become a complete expert on all of our main products and systems and all of our LFS system. If you took an hour a day, if you prospected an hour a day, you could change your life. 2 hours a day in this business, you can replace a six-figure income. And that's just an amazing thing to think about. So that's the price tag. That one measly hour a day, 2 measly hours a day that you could go look at and look at you. And I think that's a very exciting concept. And also, there's only one option with what we do. We're in the growth business. You should spend at least 30 to 50% of your time growing your business. I don't care if you have a small team, a medium-sized team, or a huge team. You need to spend at least 30 to 50% of your time on future and on growth because that's the nature of what we do. It's the very nature of business. And in our business, being in the people business, we're in a volatile world. We're in a crazy time. So more than ever, we really need to be in the complete growth business. So be thinking growth thoughts and what is growth? Literal growth in our business is prospecting for the combination of people that want to become part of our crusade or want to go use our products and anything that will lead us to those two things. And also the other thing is, are you ready to go win? And what I mean by that is a lot of times I was listening to someone that was a great actor, and they said for the first 2 or 3 years that they were in New York and talking about becoming an actor, they really didn't get out and get aggressive because they said they weren't ready for the rejection. They weren't ready to go out and pay the price. But I think life has brought us here. You're ready to go pay that price, whatever it takes to be successful. And we're going to have some great things to go over today. And I got a few more comments in between. So we're going to start out today with the great Tim O'Rourke coming to us. He's been a little busy lately, and so it's good to have him back here with us. And excited to hear from you, Tim.
Hey, great. Thanks, Jody. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Wherever you are. Boy, I got a lot to talk about. Actually, I'll keep it as brief as possible. We've had an interesting couple weeks here. This trade tension that's going on right now is really, really quite an amazing thing to watch because I want to talk about this for a second because I think we have to understand the dynamics of what's going on the geopolitical world stage. You got some pretty powerful players out there now. China if you think about China since World War II, World War II, what happened is it changed the players in the world, right? The U.S. came in and reset the stage, basically. We came in and, that taking over and going in and supporting the war over there in Europe and taking out Germany and taking out taking out Japan and all that. I mean, those were some pretty tumultuous times, and also, China was really our partner to some extent. But China was an up and coming place. Obviously, it didn't have the horsepower that the U.S. did, and so they were always a lower kind of third world country. And over the decades, they were meticulously trying to build off of their regime and their systems and processes. And so now what we find is they're wanting to be a world power. They really want to replace the U.S. on the world stage, both economically and militarily. And so they want to dominate the world, and basically on all of their political levels. And so they're toe to toe with us right now, and so they're playing out their game, and you can see it right now in this trade stuff with Trump. And Trump is, as you can kind of see, is a negotiator. Read his book, all right? The Art of Negotiation is in his mind, and this guy is playing with the President Xi over there, and they're toe to toe. And so, they're a friendly adversary is kind of what I would say. Call them whatever you want, but they're a strategic partner still with us. And it's difficult to navigate those kind of situations. And that's what's going on. And so as we see this kind of playing out in real time, it's a difficult situation, especially when Trump starts off his presidency is throwing out this tariff thing, upsetting the world trade. When you think about 2% tariffs across the board on a world stage, and then everything going to 15%, that's a huge increase. I don't care. I don't disagree or agree with it. I think it's probably something that is going to be long-term helpful as far as 3, 5, 10 years down the road, creating more manufacturing in our country. I see the long-term benefit of it, but also it's going to create somewhat of a taxation on our country, because it is the consumer ultimately that's going to be paying more for the products and services to some degree. I mean, you can sit here and argue that case for it, but when you start having these kind of conflicts with China, it's going to cause disruption in the supply chain and various aspects of the tariff war that's going on, especially when you get two big egos like those two guys. But anyway, that's going to be a disruption. I think it's going to carry on here for some time. I don't know how long it'll carry on, but it will carry on for some time. And then in the backdrop of that, we're entering the third quarter of earnings season right now, which is, pretty big news right now. We had all the banks coming out this week. B of A, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, all came in pretty strong. We're seeing, that seems to be overriding the trade tensions at the moment. So that's kind of the good news. I'm going to comment on that today, that remember, earnings will always drive the markets. Earnings are what the markets look at. That's the basis of what drives the stock market, looking out 4 to 6 months in advance. The government shutdown on the other side is entering day 15. So what does that mean? The biggest problem with that is you got 750,000 people being furloughed. And on top of that, all the economic data that gets pushed out there, like the CPI data was supposed to be released today. That's some of the stuff that the Federal Reserve looks at. So they're going to be flying more and more blind come October 28th to 29th, which is their next meeting date. So that affects everything. U.S. Treasury yields are moving lower, which is good for real estate markets. If anybody watches that, I think that's going to be good. Housing prices continue to go up. I'm seeing that mortgage rates are coming down. I think you're seeing mortgage rates now below 5.5. You can get pretty good rates. That's better than what we saw about 6 to 9 months ago. So I think that's going to help. That's going to help the overall economy. So we're still seeing a strong economy because the job market is kind of flat now, but no one's losing their jobs as much as you might have thought about. So the lower yields, treasury yields, is probably helping the real estate market, which is helping the jobs market. The other interesting thing is the U.S. dollar is losing value at a pretty fast pace. So a weakening dollar and a stronger euro, it's an interesting little game out there that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to. Mauricio, I think you and I were talking about this, with the Mexican peso and other currencies, what the effect of that is in how much buying power you have with different currencies now. But the dollar losing value, it's good to have non-dollar. You don't want to have dollars in the bank. You want to have your dollars in real estate and different things, because I think you'll see more of an appreciation. That's why you look at gold. I mean, look at gold and silver, precious metals. They're up 45% year to date already. This is why Paul Dietrich has done so well in his permanent portfolio. So is Ray Dalio. Dalio's performance has done real good in Bridgewater Capital. So when you think about how this is all playing out, oil's getting crushed right now because there's so much production getting out there, and so there's a lot of dynamics. And this is why I always focus back on. This is the why I talk about all these things, is the products and services that we sell. The way that we sell them is we package them in these products that IULs have these indexes that take into consideration all these things. We have some very, very smart people on our side that protect people. These are products that protect people long term. And you don't know what the markets are going to do. You can't time it, you can't figure it out. This is why we use these products. This is why I talk about these things. This is why we have such a great opportunity at this company, because we have smart people. We have smart people like Jody and Mauricio, leadership people here that help all of us get smarter about what we're doing. That's why we got to go out and tell the story so much. But all this data I'm giving you is just giving you background into all the missing pieces sometimes that's going on. But anyway, that's my story for today, Jody, and I'm sticking to it.
You know what? I love it. And it's ironic that how much of a perfect tee up it is for what we're getting ready to talk about with Zach in just a minute. But you know what I love? I love the pride and I love the crusading spirit that you just felt. I thought it was awesome. It really lets you know what we're all about. We're about doing what's right. I love the fact that we have incredible people. I've been called a lot of things. Smart isn't always one of them, so I appreciate that, Tim. But but I'm smart enough to know that we got smart people who take care of that financial side of things and the technology we have, and then I just go lead the team and do what we do and run the system. But I love that we do have phenomenal products. The stable of products we have are world class, and the concepts that we have are tremendous. It's a great thing, and it's timely. So we have a great message. If you have the same passion for your mission, for what we do for people as Tim does, we'll all be right where we need to be. So let's just take that segue and go right into Zach and Kimberly with their message for today about what's going on in the world of investment and insuring not just your life, but also your investments, which is, I want to insure your retirement, which is, I want to give credit to Zach for the phrase. So I'll turn it over to you, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, and Tim talked about this several months ago, and we've been talking about that, the timing wise, and everybody's familiar with the mortgage rate market and how we had a historically low mortgage rate market, and it was a refinance boom, right? And Tim talked about when we went in the opposite direction, it was time to refinance your retirement, and I just want to double down on that because we don't know what's going to happen in the stock market. It's funny because the average person, and we have a wide range of people. I'm not calling anybody average, but the average person um, sees the stock market go up. They read the headlines. They do all these kind of things. But the reality of it is, the top 10% of wealth in the country owns 93% of the stock market. So most of the people that have this sense of satisfaction of the growth and the gains that are going on in the stock market don't even have anything invested there. And if they do, it's very little. The most of us are attached to our what little resources that we've saved over our career, and that's what we're going to have. And we had a conversation with a client earlier today, and their business is struggling. It's a different time. It's a lot of small businesses that are struggling right now because people aren't spending the way that they have been in the past. So just because the AI boom is creating wealth does not mean it's creating wealth for everyone. And so I really think, not knowing where we're going, not knowing what's going to happen in the stock market, I really think it's time for us to address these people that we're talking to directly as individuals and say, let's talk about your personal economy. Let's talk about what you need to be worried about, not talk about the global economy, not talk about what's going on. Yes, understand that tariffs are going to have an impact. They are going to change the prices probably before Christmas of a lot of the things that we buy as they start to matriculate into the marketplace. For corporations like Walmart that have a very thin profit margin, they can't afford to keep prices the same and have them start costing 20% more. So there are going to be changes that we will feel as average Americans. So what we've got to do is we got to talk to these people now about their assets that they've gathered, however large the amount is or however small the amount is, and what's the best thing we can do about that. um, Institutional investors and managers that like a Paul Dietrich and like people that are their job is to preserve assets at all cost, while also earning a return when they can. Those types of investors have transitioned way over into the secure side of things. There's a lot of gold that's being purchased by those types of folks, a lot of things like that. So we need to be aware and we need to talk about this. If you guys are appointed with insurance companies, you go back and look at your inbox. And I did this, a couple of days ago when we were talking about this. And for a while, several months, there were emails coming out saying multi-year guaranteed annuity rates are increasing. They're increasing. They're increasing. Well, the last 2 months, the emails I've gotten have been decreasing those guaranteed rates inside annuities. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means that we're in one of those times where it's time to refinance your retirement before the rates go way up, right? Or in this case, go way down. A lot of people are sitting in mortgages that they wish they had gone from a variable rate loan to a fixed rate loan back when the fixed rates were 2.5. And now we're sitting at fixed rates right around 6, which is better than they were a month ago. But we need to be having the same conversation with ourselves, with our families, with our clients, about the products and services that we offer, which is that flight to the circle of safety. It's how you can eliminate all risk of downside loss while at the same time giving yourself potential for an increase. I think now is a very, very pivotal time in our economy. There's a guy that just wrote a book, and he was interviewed on 60 Minutes this past week. I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is. I'll tell you, it's Andrew Ross Sorkin. Anyway, he wrote a new book called 1929, and it's about what happened in 1929. And he said very clearly in this interview, and he's not a whisperer. He doesn't know what's going on in the future, but he said we're either in some sort of an off the charts, something we've never seen, which that wouldn't surprise me at all, right? We're seeing a lot of things we've never seen before, type of growth, or we're sitting on the cusp of something that could be that disastrous based on all the things that we're seeing. So I don't mean to be doomsday. We got the answer, right? We just got to get to them first. We got to talk to them first. And I'm not saying market-based investments are bad or you shouldn't have those. I mean, I sell them. We offer them here at HGI. But what I am saying is that they're not short-term we're not sitting at the poker table, right? We're not trying to ride that next little bump up. And people need to know that it's time to buckle your seatbelt and protect your assets and convert them to income if that works. But it's time to really be in a defensive posture, I think, at least for the next quarter, and kind of see what happens. And I think that these annuities that we have right now, and we've talked about this, offer a solution that can guarantee an income stream. You were looking at something a few minutes ago about why an index annuity is a good answer for people that might be considering it.
So obviously the companies you're appointed with, they send out emails, and it was from Athene, and it was talking about how fixed index annuities are a really great bond alternative. Previously in the past, right, a lot of people use bonds to hedge against stocks and things like that, and to guarantee that income and things like that. But it just said in the email that fixed index annuities typically can give you the same and guaranteed income than bonds with less capital, which means less money in there without, as much risk, or also cheaper without as many fees. So anyway, it's just important to look at. It's important to look at all those pieces. I talked to Paul a few weeks ago. Tim was talking about him a few minutes ago, and every time I talk to him, he's like, listen, we haven't had a correction since 2008. We haven't had a serious correction, like a real correction, right? And that's been, what, is that 18 years, 15 years, 18 years?
It's been a long time.
Typically, we have a market correction every 8 to 9 years, and it's been double that. What do you think is going to happen, right? And so I think we just need to be prepared. If you're 21, 31 years old, you're probably fine, right? You got time. You have a minute. If you're 51, 61 years old, you probably don't have time, right? Because you don't have time to ride that correction. So all we're saying is just make sure you've evaluated everything. Make sure you're talking to your clients. I talked to Debbie Worthington yesterday, and she said, she's talking about life insurance, but she just said, I'm going to be loud. Like, I want people to hear me. I don't want anybody to ever say, I wish you had told me. And I think that's the position we're in right now with people's assets that are headed into retirement, because I do think we have a volatile moment coming up, and it's not going to be one that they want to ride through if they can prevent it.
Can I just jump in and add something here real quick?
No.
I'll mute her, James.
Thank you, Zach. No, I just want to say, I think what Zach and Kimberly are saying is spot on, and it reminds me of kind of like earlier this year when we had a scare. If you all remember, we had a turbulent time earlier this year, and I remember Rory calling me, and he just said, James, we got to be as loud as we got to be, man. It's not about securities, it's about security. And he's so right. And I watched him just rack it up on all the annuity rollover, 401k rollovers and new annuities and whatnot. And now he's right at it again as we enter more turbulent times. So I think Zach and Kimberly are spot on. We need to be having every conversation with everyone of what are you doing to protect and preserve your retirement from another correction, from another potential crash.
Absolutely. All right. That it, guys? You're muted.
Yeah, we'll just give it back to you. I think that we're in a great spot where we are, better than most people out there. We control our own destinies, and we control our own income, and we've got a great story to tell, regardless of what happens in the market. So,
no
I'll
doubt.
give it back to you.
Well, and just kind of stay tight, because I want to maybe bounce off this, guys. I want you to understand how important this really is. Couple things. One is that you got to be loud, but you got to be consistently loud. This is a very important point. Sometimes we'll go maybe loud for 5 days, or loud for a day, or loud for a week. Rory is successful because it's relentless. Over and over and over. A consistent message, boldly proclaimed, is the answer right now. The other thing is, let me tell you how important this is. Kimberly said, if you're younger and you have an adjustment, if you will, in the market, that you have enough time to overcome it. There's impending doom coming when you look at the baby boomers that are entering retirement age. Their number one issue is that they haven't saved money. So we're acting as if everybody's got all this money that we're trying to preserve. there are a lot of people with some money to preserve. But what happens above the people who don't have much have no room for error. None. They cannot afford a downturn. They of all people cannot afford a downturn. And so that is a crusade. I mean, that is going out and not to switch things over to recruiting and building. But I also will tell you this. When you figure out that gap, and this is one of the things Mauricio is going to talk about, and he's good at talking about, is what's the gap? What's the gap from being underinsured to what you need? He's going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But what happens is if you need $5 million for retirement, and right now you have 400,000, you're not going to save $5 million if you're over 40, 50 years old. I don't care. It's just how it is. You might do some miracle, but you're probably not. That means you've got to go save what you can, preserve what you've got, and build a business to make up the gap. And I'm going to go into this a whole lot more in the future, but I think we may have stumbled onto kind of a war cry. So having said all that, what I mean by that is, let's just say you need $3 million and somehow you can save $1 million. Well, you got to find a way to come up with the income that would have come from that other $2 million. That's 30 people licensed in a base shop. And Zach, I see your wheels turning.
Yeah, no, there's something we really need to go back and revisit. I'm sure there's several presentations about it, but one of the biggest recruiting tools anybody can use is what we used to call the wealth equivalency model. So we can show you what your base shop needed to look like to be equal to the wealth that you need to draw your retirement. And so when you show somebody a retirement shortfall, you can tell them they need to save $6,000 a month for the next, however long, and they might not make $6,000 a month, but you can show them easily wealth equivalency wise what that base would look like, and what that income would look like from a small base shop.
Well, I can already tell you guys that's going to be next week's training. We're on it. We already got this, but it's time has come right now. The era of that is right now. I think you're going to blow your mind next week on that. This has been tremendous stuff today. So let's get to become the crusaders that we were born to be. No one's needed it more than ever. I will tell you this. We've talked to a lot of Primerica guys lately, so that whole thing, and we're talking about the whole term issue. A lot of people, they did a great job on this crusade of buy term, invest the difference. And they did a ton of it in 1980, 1990. And those people who died having got term over what they had before, that was a great thing in terms of a financial perspective for their family. But what did most people who bought those term policies do? Most of them dropped those policies within 4 or 5 years. This is human nature, okay? So less than 10, 15% of those ever pay out. I think it's actually way less than that, but I'm being generous on that number. So I'm not knocking that. I'm just telling you, this is more of a sure thing that's going to help people because they are going to retire. They already do have that money. And this is a big deal. So thank you guys. Great messages. All right. Mauricio, let's just kind of start our conversation. Mauricio is doing a great job in many areas. He's really simplified. If you haven't, it's probably not the time to really get off into Zyberzeus much, but if you haven't looked at it lately, you need to. If I had some way of telling you to, if we were McDonald's headquarters and we could control our franchisees, if you will, I'd tell you to go back and take a look at what's going on. And there are some AI features that are there. Get on one of the calls that they have, but he can tease you a little bit about that. But on the other side, getting into the tools to simplify this whole process, I had a conversation this past week. Prashant moved into the neighborhood that I used to live in and that my parents live in now. And so I stopped by his house to say hello. And in that conversation, the conversation morphed over to an area that's really kind of gave us a real clear plan of what it is we're wanting to do. So I'll let Mauricio share that because I shared it with him and it's caused him to. And this comes out of some things that Zach and Kimberly and I have talked about before. And so this isn't radical, but I think it's very clear. We're in an era of clarity. If you go look at Abacus, it's very simple. Go use the simplistic version of it. Go use it. Go forward. So Mauricio, if you would just take the next few minutes and go over our conversation and some of your thoughts and how to use those tools to go attack. And you bet. Hey, by the way, listen, none of this matters unless we go into action. I swear, whatever we learn on here, you need to go tell it to 30 people in the next 24 hours. You ought to somehow make that your rule, or all this is just a moot point. So please don't just get on here and get your warm fuzzies and go, oh, this feels good. We're doing good for people. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. You're actually hurting people if you don't go tell them this information. So let's go act on this stuff. So, Mauricio.
We will, and we'll make it simple. I'd like to begin by asking you, or not asking you, but rather sharing something with you, because the 2.5 decades that I've been in this, I felt really good when 10 years pass and a client almost doubled their money in an annuity. Have been able to review some of these IUL policies from clients from 19 years ago, where they put 80 grand and funded. Now they have 300,000 in cash value. That feels good. But I can't even describe the feeling when a client calls, a client that you insured 5 years, 10 years ago. Now you're able to deliver a $3 million check or a $2 million check. There's such a big difference. There's no comparison in how you feel as the agent when you're delivering a $2-3 million check to death benefit than helping somebody double their money in 10 years using even some of the products that we have. And I say that because that ought to be fuel for all of us to really go out and tackle this major problem. Let me read something from you for you from LIMRA. So only about 51% of adults in America have some sort of life insurance, whether that's something they purchase directly or through work. 51%. That means that roughly half, right? Because 49% have no insurance at all. And out of the same LIMRA, and I have some data here, just I don't want to bore you with this, but it's important for you to know from Deloitte, Swiss Re, and some of these companies that study, right? They do deep research of these sort of things, and so there's between a 12 trillion and $25 trillion gap in terms of need for insurance that Americans people need. And so that's a major gap. And so if we just went about solving for that, solving to close the gap of term insurance or leaving people properly protected, all the other annuities, all the other even money under management, all these other products are going to come as a result of that, because what happens is when you do a great job for somebody, even somebody that may already have insurance, you go in there and you say, you know what, it's good that you have insurance, but you have a gap, and you close that gap. Or you didn't have insurance and you're able to put them in the best type of policy that's suited for them. At that, you then become a trustworthy person in that family. And I guarantee you that those conversations, even if you don't start them, they'll start them with you and say, hey, I have this money, or do you know of somebody that can help with this or with that? And so it's great to know that that's going to happen, because then you're able to service them with any other needs that they may have. And so, but I just, again, wanted all of us to just recognize how big of an opportunity really we have in our hands, and that we can go after to closing this insurance gap. Half of Americans don't have insurance. And of the half that have some type of insurance, don't have enough. I mean, it's that big. So now I'm going to share my screen, because I am a big believer that using this tool will help you sell the right amount of insurance and sell the right every single time. So what are you looking at? You're looking at Abacus, right? You're looking at the journey that you take people through and educating them. And if you look at where the journey leads to, is to cover the term, is to close the gap on that first meeting, second meeting. If you go and study this journey, it always starts with first covering that term, that gap. And I would say that even if you're taking the FNA on paper, just like we're doing this exercise with James yesterday. He took an FNA on paper. And I said, well, why don't you also put it on digital so you can discover opportunities that maybe you haven't yet seen, and make sure that you're able to then come back with the client and show them something that that will make sense to them. Here's what I mean by that. So let's just take Diego, who I always pick on because it is a made up profile. But if you have that FNA, here's what happens when you take the FNA. It builds trust with your client big time. To me, whenever I'm done with the 15 minutes of magic, right? And the 15 minutes of magic is just going through that 8-slide presentation that shows what we do, how we do it, why we do it. And I get into having, and I get into this step of taking the FNA. I say, I'm going to now, Mr. Client, switch over to our FNA, and this is going to help you better. It's going to help me understand your financial picture right now, and it's going to help me find the best product for you. And I share my screen. I don't just do it on the side. I share my screen to have them help me fill this FNA completely. And they enjoy the process actually, because they feel they're being useful and helping you help them. I'm just telling you based on experience. So I'm going through each one of these things with them, and they're correcting, hey, it's not, the number is not 668, it's 4667. And as you're just going through this information, you will find that, first of all, it's going to take you about the same amount of time whether you take it on paper or you take it digital, right? But as you go through this, you'll end up with a complete financial needs analysis, or at least a complete FNA. And then this is what I want to get to, which is you now have the full data, and you can get into this conversation of closing that gap, which is the proper protection. So in this case, even though this client, like if we go back to the FNA, right? Let me go back to the FNA. If I go back to the FNA, in the insurance section here, we find that Dora has a Index Universal Life with 250,000, and Diego has a 250,000 term. I just added this. I can continue adding depending on what type of policies they have. They're all here. You have either term, whole life universal, index universal, variable group, or other. I don't know if there's other, but whatever policies they have at the moment, you can add them here so that when it's time to do the plan, right? It's time to do the plan. You can go here to proper protection and have this conversation with them, right? You just run the scenario and say, okay, so Mr. Diego, Diego is one of the 51% of Americans that have some insurance, but just don't have enough. He has a 250,000 current term policy. Okay. And have this conversation, and say there's a lot of different items when it comes to being properly protected. There's a lot of items that you need to cover for. And some of them are term, meaning that you need to cover them for a period of time. They could expire, like when you have your debt paid off, you may not longer need to have debt insurance, or when your mortgage, or when all of your children are, independent, you may not need to necessarily replace income. When your mortgage is paid off, you may not necessarily need more protection because you have your mortgages paid off. If your children are out of college, you may not need these. So these are temporary. That's why it's called term insurance. And so we use the acronym DIME that covers for these items, which is debt, income. Of course, by default, we have 10 years, but it could be 15 or 20. And by the way, just if you're noticing, I added the tooltips so that you understand what these mean. In this example, for income, for the I, It says it's income replacement, lifestyle protection. Why income replacement matters. And it says it maintains current standard of living. It covers daily expenses, food, utilities, transportation. No forced career location changes, right? On the surviving spouse. Time to grieve without immediate financial pressure. Coverage durations could be 10 years until youngest child is independent, 15 years is through college graduation, or 20 years until survivor reaches retirement age, and they can, have a Social Security, and they can turn on income from other assets. But this helps help you explain to the client what these items are and why do we recommend them in such a way, right? What I love about the Abacus technology is that when it comes to education, you need to make sure that you are protecting, or that you are providing an amount of insurance that would cover the 4 year of college when they reach age of 18, not today's current college cost. Because if you think about how much an average would be a annual tuition for a in-state public school, let's just say, I'm just going to put a number out there. Let's say it's 25 grand a year. Well, due to inflation, 18 years from now, if you have a 1-year-old like I do, actually, my youngest is now going to be 2 years old, but I'm talking 16 years from now, right? Apply the inflation effect to this thing, and you may be looking at maybe $60,000 a year, more than double. And so if you have 3 children and they're all young, that's why this is $475,000. Our dime here now takes into account based on how they said they wanted, where they wanted to send their children to. It now adjusts to that. Let me explain to be more clear. When you took the FNA in family planning, we have the option for you to choose, or for the client to choose, if they want to send their children to a public or private. And you can see these numbers changing down here, which is a private college, right? The future annual cost is $97,000 versus $56,000 today. So you're really doing good planning, because now if that's going to be the cost just for this 2-year-old, in 16 years will be $389,000 for 4 year on a private college. And you cannot insure them for $56,000. You got to insure them by $97,000. Does that make sense? If it was a public school, it's different. Today is $24,000, but when this 2-year-old Axel is 18, that's going to be $42,000. So for him, it's $169,000. For Leonardo, it's $158,000. It would be $24,000 today, but we need to adjust to inflation. So when you are taking the FNA and you are asking that individual, that family, would you, if you're thinking about sending your children to college, do you already have a school you're sending them to that you know? Because you can also look for that school. And sometimes they know what the cost is today. But if they don't, you could at least use the national average. But that's better planning than not doing it this way. And so when you run those scenarios now, let me go back to client. When you run those scenarios of proper protection, you know that the term amount for college education for 3 children is $475,000, and you know that number is coming accurately from the FNA. So the true proper amount of insurance this individual needs is $1.7 million. Given that he has a $250,000 policy, his gap is $1.5 million. That is the term amount. And then you can definitely have a conversation about the permanent types of coverages that they need, and say, look, there's other items that you may not have thought of, but here's what's going to happen. You can begin from top to bottom and say, the likelihood of needing long-term care, or even needing the benefits of the living benefit. You know what I'm talking about. This is the advancements of coverage in the event of you developing chronic illness, critical illness, terminal illness. They're more likely at older ages. It's just naturally, the older you are, the faster that health deteriorates, or that other chronic or terminal or chronic or critical diseases show up. And so we need to consider having that protection as well, because what you're protecting is you're protecting your retirement by protecting against the cost of long-term care or out-of-pocket medical cost that gravitates around 100,000, even when you have medical insurance, right? Even when you have Medicare, is protecting your retirement. Now, most Americans or that have saved for retirement, as Jody's saying, a lot of people don't have money, but there's still $43 trillion in IRAs. So most people have most of their money in IRAs. They have more money in IRAs than their homes are worth. Well, that's debatable because home has really skyrocketed. But 43 trillion. I'd like to know if you can Google right now and tell me what is the total equity in real estate in just residential, not commercial. How many trillions is that? I don't know if it's 40 or 50 trillion. I don't know. I just know that the stock market may be hovering around, I don't know, 55, 60 trillion, but 43 of it is in these things called IRAs, 401ks. Well, if you are going to do what most Americans do, which is just wait till you're 73 to take those RMDs and pay the taxes on the money you take out, most likely you'll have some money still left on that IRA that could be taxable to your heirs. So based on what you currently have, you are projected to pay $200,000 in taxes from your current IRA when it's passed to your children, not to your spouse. So whether you want to have that money be paid by the IRA itself, or would you rather pay it by insurance? It's cheaper to pay it through insurance. Now, final expense is another thing to plan for. That's permanent. Probate cost and estate taxes, if there's any, right? 2 to 5% is the cost to pay for probate when you don't have a trust. And widow cushion, which is the financial impact of losing the spouse, is about 300,000. Just look at this, guys. This you need to be talking to people about, because this is what gives value to permanent insurance. The widow penalty. Women survive 12 and a half years after spouse loss, and men survive 10.6 years after spouse loss. So once Social Security is gone, and then you have a tax penalty. Married, 22%, in other words, $94,000 what got them to a 22% tax bracket, but now only $47,000 when you file single. So it means that very likely, if they have that similar sort of income, similar income is going to push them in a higher tax bracket or a higher tax. And then they go from losing half the standard deduction. And I think this is last year, 29,200 to 14,000, because you now file as single. So in short, you have a 300,000. That is the financial impact over that 10 to 12 year, 300,000, and we're only planning for 150. So we should do 300,000, right? But at least 150,000 that you can do. So that brings us to 748,000. So Mr. Diego here does not have any permanent insurance. Lorena, or what's it, Dora does, she has some permanent insurance and no term. So she needs less permanent and more term. Now, of course, there's two ways to buy for this. One is, depending on their finances, they could have both policies, or they could start with term and then convert to perm. They can buy term, and as these fade out, they can convert to perm. Right? Or they can get both. Any questions here? But that, I think that conversation, and then just being able to gather the F&A in that form, and then you're able to show that to a client, I think it looks professional. I think it gives you a very solid foundation as to what they need. And then it's up to them if they want to eliminate some of those items. And I don't want to have protection in case of long-term care. I don't want to have the widow cushion. I don't want to pay the taxes the cheapest way, which is through insurance. Have them tell you what they don't want. But they're all different items. And so if we have still a few more minutes, I'd like to share a couple other things with you guys, because when you take that F&A, you're able to see things in the sales opportunities section here, other products and other solutions that you can offer to those clients that you didn't see in the beginning, because sometimes it just takes you experience to be able to identify opportunities. Here's what I mean by that. So because I took the F&A, the sales opportunities, this is for you to see, not for you to see with the client. This is for you to see. It's showing that based on the rule of 100, I could talk to this client about maybe talking to Zach about AUM, maybe putting some money in assets under management. If you're not securities licensed, just refer it. But it's also saying that based on the same rule, that $253,000 ought to be considered to be allocated towards the hybrid world, and that there is a need for permanent policy for him and for her. Right? These are the amounts that you saw over there. And then there's 3 more sales opportunities. There's a gap of a 1.5 million in term for him, and there's a gap of 1.5 for her. And then there's also a will and trust gap. They don't have a will and a trust. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 products and solutions you can actually offer the client. And it's okay if you started with the term because you went in there closing the gap. But you could have the perm conversation, and it makes it easy because I give you a link right here that goes right into the actual calculator that helps you have that conversation. If all you want to have is and let's say if in the first meeting all you did was covered the term, you can go back and cover the perm, right? You go back to client, you go back to sales opportunities. I should put you a faster link to that. And then you can have the annuity conversation. Well, so it says here that the client needs 253 in annuities. I'm not securities licensed, but I will talk about safety. So talk about true diversification. You click on it, which is the 3 rules of investment, the proper allocation. You can't get into securities conversation, but you can get into the protection side, which is, Mr. Client, there's this thing, you've heard about the rule of 72 and the rule of 4%. There's also this rule called the rule of 100. And what that rule says is that if you want your money to last longer, if you want to be able to weather those volatile moments, especially in retirement, to be able to always be drawing the income you need without having to sell at a loss, then here's where you are, Mr. Client. You have too much money in the world of protection. You have some money in insurance already, and then you have some money in the market. But the rule of 100 says that we ought to be aiming to have no more than 3 to 6 months worth of our living expenses in the bank. And the rest had to abide by the rule of 100, which is you subtract your age from 100. If you're 46, that means 54 could be in the market. That's for Zach to manage. And then the 46 could be in either a combination of index annuities or index universal life, IUL or FIAs. If the client is younger than 55, and I invite you guys to read this, we give you some general guidelines for best practices. The general guidelines is if the money is coming from non-qualified account and the client is under 55, an IUL could make sense because they have just about enough time for that thing to cook and do its thing to provide more income, tax-free income, via the features that IUL provide that an FIA can't. And if the client is over age 55, maybe consider the annuity. I'm not saying that that has to be the rule all the time, because the client may very well not be thinking about taking income until he's 75. So you have more than 15 years to go. But generally speaking, if he's going to retire at 65 and expecting income, the IUL is probably not going to be seasoned and at its point to provide the most income. So just this would serve you as a great guide to give you a direction as when to recommend an FIA or when to recommend an IUL. So I think we're out of time here with just a couple minutes. Well, a couple minutes. Let's take advantage of that. But you can see how with one click of a button, you can have these conversations, right? And I would just add today, hopefully it's not too much, but I do want to give, there's a difference between two calculators that you need to recognize. One of them is called the Retirement Nest Egg, which is in the 6 Steps to Financial Basics. The Retirement Nest Egg is a calculator that was designed to help the client understand if they had a savings gap. Just know how that we have an insurance gap. There's also this thing called the savings gap. And let me go for a client that has no money, because Jody said, we're talking about protecting all this money, but people need to save more money. They don't have that much money. So let me go find a client that resembles that. So let's just say, I don't know, I'm going to get Haiti. Haiti's got some money, right? But doesn't have enough. So when I go and I do the Retirement Nest Egg calculator, you can see that she has $57,000 in retirement savings. She would need about $7,000 to maintain her current lifestyle. Is 47 years of age, wants to retire at 65. So she has almost $4,000 of retirement savings gap. Right? So this calculator is helping you educate the client on how much money they need to set aside if they truly want to have the amount needed, the minimum amount needed that would produce the $13,000 a month that they're going to need when they retire. Because $7,000 today is equal to $13,000 at 65, adjusted to 3.5% inflation. Of course, that could be higher. And that's including Social Security, what comes in covers about 30% of what you need. Because if no Social Security exists, the gap is 6,000. Right? Is that big? Because that's having to need to have a nest egg that's now 3 million. But let's just say Social Security is going to be around. And so what you then are able to have as a conversation with the client is what are the ways that you can actually go and address for this, right? And I know we don't have enough time to go through this right now, but it's at least up until here, have this conversation. And the other calculator is the longevity risk, which is known as the retirement planner, which two different ones. Don't get confused. You have the nest egg and then you have the planner. The planner is for those people that say, well, I've got, like, let's go back to this guy that feels so confident that he's going to not run out of money in retirement because every projection shows he's going to do fine. Let me show you. So let's say Diego, again. Diego feels so confident because here's what Diego did. When we ran the nest egg calculator, Diego's like, wait, I don't have a gap, right? I don't have a retirement savings gap. Based on what I need, which is close to 2 million, I'm on track to have minimum I'm on track to have, what is this, total retirement and retirement, 2.4 million. Right? So he's doing fine. But when you run this one, the longevity risk, this goes to age 90 or age 85. Okay, so it goes to age 85. It takes the assets, everything he's got, everything he's saving, and you're going to see numbers that are a little bit different, but I want you to know where they come from. And what you're looking at is you're looking at money lasting to age 100. or it's 100 and more, because the parameters are saying that based on what he has, money is growing at 7%. And you guys know that this isn't the way the real world works, especially when all the money is in market, right? It's just showing that if everything was perfect, you're at 46, you have 580,000. If you earn 7%, you're going to earn 40,000. You're going to have an ending balance of 645, and you're going to go, and you're going to grow this money until you retire, or you retire. Your wife is still working, and you may need, in order for you to maintain the same lifestyle, you're going to need to start withdrawing $92,000 out of your account. And you can show here, what that looks like. What the 92, why do I have to, or no, other ways, how much do I actually have to withdraw in order for me to take out, to have the amount that I need? But the point I'm trying to make is that you can see them taking out the money they need, and the money actually lasting the age 100, and they still have a lot of money. So they still have $8 million to pass to heirs, because I guess the amount that they needed based on the amount that they took out was less than maybe 3-4%. But then you incorporate, what if the money was in the market? Now you start to see up and downs, the ups and the downs. And if you go to life expectancy, it went down to 95. So what happened to those $8 million? Like, at age 95, his 95, her 90, they're out of money, because we were replicating 20 years of 2020, or you could replicate 19 to 2010. So you could do 20 years just to kind of give scenarios, because nobody really knows what the market's going to be the next 20 years. Now, what if money is in the market, and what if all of a sudden things like this happen? Let's say that taxes doubled. Or let's say taxes don't double, but let's say Social Security is cut by 50%. Let's say that you needed long-term care, and now you run that, and now money only lasts to age 87, because these things could happen. And then you can actually see them down here. You can see those events happening where you have Social Security's cut, so you're going to need more money to make up for that hole. If you have long-term care for 3 to 5 years, is what you're going to need. And so you start to see all these different scenarios, and you then start to see that money isn't lasting as long when you put real life scenarios into this. Then you go to other events, which is like, are you going to take care of elder parents? Are you going to be supporting children, even if they are adults? Are you maybe expecting major medical events? How about, are you going to upgrade a vehicle? Are you going to take dream vacation? Are you going to renovate your home? And you can run these things, and all of a sudden now, 71 years. And so how do you overcome that? Then you start to incorporate what we do, like amidst having those real problems that happen to people in retirement, because not everything is perfect. It's not like you earn 7%, and everything is just a smooth ride. These are real situations. You're taking care of elder parents. Maybe your children come and you have to help them. Maybe you have home renovations. These things I'm talking about. This is not, unrealistic things. Then you have to then come back and say, well, if we incorporate a little bit of an IUL, maybe a little bit of an FIA, maybe if we figure out how to strategically spend the money down, maybe if we follow the rule of 100, if we incorporate these things, we can easily add another 8 years of life to your money. And you have what backs up these claims. Because in the end, what we want to do is we want to expand the life of the money. right? And as you incorporate some of these strategies, you give life a little bit more money. What if we figure out a way to, you know, allocate the money properly in a way that you avoid tax on Social Security? Now we gave 11 years of life to the same money. So you have things that are working against you, but there are things you can do to help you. So we'll have more time to do deeper training on these things. But what I wanted to show is that when you take the FNA, it just takes one click for you to be able to have these conversations. Now, do you have to have these conversations with every single one of your clients? No. Sometimes you don't need to open all these different cans of worms. Like sometimes the simpler is better. But sometimes when you're are having to, you know, talk to a client that actually have some assets, and you're able to bring this conversation to them, they're like, that's kind of stuff I've never really heard from my Morgan Stanley guy. You know, I don't know if there's any comments from Zach, Kimberly, from Tim, from Jody, any one of you, just to wrap it up. And
No, it's great
that I
stuff,
shared.
Mauricio. Make sure they know when you're doing your call every Wednesday.
Yeah, 2:30. So it's 1 o'clock, 2:30. I'll see you for some major updates on CyberZeus. It's epic proportion. It's not the CyberZeus you know or you think of when you think of CyberZeus anymore. It's completely a whole different animal.
Great AI features, kind of to tease you guys.
Yeah.
Go look at it. Thank you guys so much. Thank everybody for being on. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Zach and Kimberly. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, guys. Act.